that
Absolutely,
okay?
yes. Absolutely. Feel free to record.
Great. So it's so nice to have you, Erinch, with us. And I just wanted to ask you, what is your name and your current position?
My name is Erinch Sahan. I'm the business and enterprise lead at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. So we are an organization that tries to bring Doughnut Economics into life and create action around it. And all of those people that have been inspired by it, interested in it, that are trying to make big changes. We're trying to create tools and work with them, help them, support them to make this big transformation in our economy that we need. And I lead our work on translating this to the business world.
Great. So we're very happy to have you here today. And I'm just going to ask you a few things that for those of us who know Doughnut Economics are still, open questions, at least for us and for the cooperative movements that we belong to. So everyone has heard about Doughnut Economics. I mean, it's something that has gone on the press and the media, but rarely can people actually explain it to others. Could you give us a 30-second definition, including the relevance that this innovative framework has gained in recent years?
Absolutely. So what is Doughnut Economics? Think of it as a compass for human prosperity for the 21st century, with the aim of meeting the needs of all the people on our planet within the means of the living planet. And the way that it tries to create this compass for human prosperity is it proposes to have two concentric rings. So it consists of a social foundation, that part inside the donut, which is to ensure that no one is left behind on life's essentials. And above this, there's an ecological ceiling, which is the other concentric circle, which is to ensure that humanity does not collectively overshoot the planetary boundaries that protect Earth's life supporting systems. And it's between these two boundaries, this planetary boundary and this social foundation, there is actually a donut-shaped space that is both ecologically safe and socially just. And this is the space in which humanity can thrive.
Wow, excellent. I wish I could, explain that to my friends as easily as you've just done, because it would be so much easier. But anyway, thank you so much. And in the cooperative movement, we're trying to sort of, align ourselves with everything that has been going on in the discourse and the public debate about sustainability and, contributing to the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals and everything. So I was just wondering about what you actually think of the current array of norms at the EU level, the European level, that are aimed at forcing, businesses to report their impacts on the environment, and on society, to reveal the potential harm of what they're doing and what they're causing on the ecosystem. Because we are currently sort of, this wave is coming our way, and businesses are kind of scared, of more norms, more laws, more compliance. So do you think we're actually finding the way to make this transition towards a different economic system based on this awareness, that people and the planet are parts of the game? Or do you think that it's just going to be, the latest bureaucratic nightmare who will finally, end up keeping things as they are, everything run by multinationals and all that? Because that's, a lot of people think that. So I was wondering what you actually think of this.
Well, I love this question, Paula, because I think it gets to the heart of the ambition of policymakers. That what are they really trying to achieve? Are they trying to make companies be less bad? Or are they trying to create a new generation of businesses that are born with all of these goals inside their DNA, that they are actually focused in terms of the way they are designed, in terms of the way they are structured, in terms of the way that their governance works, their ownership works. And of course, the cooperative movement is actually where a lot of this inspiration should come from, because that is this movement that for more than 100 years, for several hundred years, have been showing that you can have business that has a different goal, that is meeting the needs of society, but actually is designed to be distributive, designed to enforce and push for equality, designed to have inclusive governance. So with that said, what I think is happening by and large is that European and other policy leaders do not have enough ambition about what is possible in the business world, that we are trying to just address the bits that are the biggest harms. Oh, let's be a little bit more transparent. Let's have a little bit more long-term perspective. Let's be a little bit more mindful of human rights problems. And maybe we reduce the ecological impact here and there, because the imagination is limited to what exists today rather than what is possible into the future. And for this reason, I think that we need to actually challenge policymakers to say, look, we're not just asking you to make today's economy less bad. We're building something different. And that something different has to be quite different from the 20th century. The 20th century business models and enterprise designs are the ones that got us to this mess of being in planetary overshoot, and this mess of not delivering enough for the people on this planet. This mess where they are forcing to always go for growth, always go for more profit, always only do the socially and ecologically responsible thing if it can increase profits. And this is a design choice. Business doesn't have to be designed this way. And if we actually rethink our policy ecosystem to think, how do we have more social solidarity enterprises, more social economy enterprise, more cooperatives, more social enterprises, all these sort of alternative models that are starting to come up, then we would come up with very different policies. We would no longer say, let's have new ways to regulate the businesses that are currently in our economy, but how do we create regulations and policies that help transform our economy? Because business also doesn't have to stay static. I mean, the average company lives for less than 10 years. The companies that will populate our economy in the year 2032 have not been born yet. We can shape them through policy. We can shape them through the way that the government regulations can really leave their fingerprints on them. And the last thing I would say is that governments know how to shape the business world already. They do this in industry policy. So when they decide we want to have a biotech industry, we want to have an IT industry, they actually start bringing together a list of different sort of policy instruments. They have access to finance, they bring in a different tax code, they bring in different accounting standards, they have different support mechanisms and, you know, access to different sorts of professional services, etc. They can create these incubators and accelerators for different businesses in a sector. Now, imagine if they took all of that policy toolkit and applied it for cooperatives, social enterprises, and other social solidarity economy world. You would come up with a very different economy. But unfortunately, what I see in a lot of the regulations is that lack of imagination, because there's a sense of defeat, there's a sense of resignation that the big guys in the business world, we're stuck with them. So let's do the best we can. And I think we can get out of that thinking and think, how do we actually build the new economy that is populated by a different DNA of business? And that's what would really interest me to see across the policy world.
I so agree with you. I so agree with you. It's the same old thing that we say, you know, you cannot solve the same problem with the same mindset. But and plus, I really like the idea that we're lacking ambition, but at the end of the day, we're lacking will. Because as you say, I mean, I see you're mentioning Mariana Mazzucato's work and all that the state has done so far in the past decades. I mean, we know how to do this. We know how to run this game if we just wanted to. And so I totally agree with you. And thank you for mentioning cooperatives, because of course that's my next question. And that makes us all very happy because you know our world, and I think you've worked with cooperatives before. So it's nice to speak to somebody that knows this world. But my next question is about the actual role that you think cooperatives may have, you know, in the current clash between, you know, those who believe in this regenerative and distributive economics as the only way to go, as the only way left to go, because there's no other way, because then the planet will no longer be. And those are things that we can still go on as we're doing, maybe doing a little less harm, to the environment, but then there will always be a way to replenish these resources. And these are the techies and the people who think, that will find yet another way to solve whatever problem may come up. So, the question is, how do you think cooperatives can contribute, in this clash, and where do you see them fit, and where do you see their role? I guess
I see a few roles for cooperatives. One is to innovate, to realize its own potential in new ways, in new sectors, in new designs. I've been talking to people trying to create new cooperative banks, for instance, and thinking of, well, actually they do need investment in a different way. And I've watched them look at ways they can design their cooperative differently, so that it's, one member, one vote for the majority that is controlled, but also they're allowing some investment to come in on a different basis that can support this to happen. And it's the only way we're going to get cooperative banks, for instance, in some countries, because of the regulatory requirements around capital, etc., and the market needs. We need to sort of innovate, I think, in the cooperative movement as well. Different structures, different ways of envisioning ourselves, without letting go of the central principle that this is a mission-led, purpose-led enterprise model that is going to be multi-stakeholder governed and locked in to that mission, but can have some relationship with capital in a different way alongside it to enable it to sort of spread and thrive. So I think that's the first thing, and because we need different versions of cooperatives in more sectors. We need new ones, fresh ones, young ones, and we need to sort of re-energize the movement in some of these sectors. And I know platform cooperativism is taking off in some places. And I know that it's, worker cooperatives have really, come into their own in different economies as well, and different local places. But the potential of the model is so enormous that I think the cooperative movement can't afford to not adapt. It has to adapt its model. It has to adapt new ways and new ideas. So I think that's the first one. And the second is to talk more about its own enterprise design, not just about the cooperative principles, all the interesting ways, because the conversation we have to open and the perspective we have to push is that we have a choice in the way we design business. The mainstream economy gives 100% of the power to capital, 100% of the priority to capital. So everything is structured, all the accountability, the governance, the board, everything is there to maximize the return to capital and extract it as fast as possible. And this is destroying our planet, it's destroying societies. Now, if we are going to look at alternatives, we have to look at that through the lens of, we can design these things differently. We can design these things in an infinite amount of ways. Actually, the mainstream business model, the mainstream corporate structure, that's the one that is limiting. That is the one that lacks imagination. That is the one that is homogeneous, like a monocrop, like one big singular version. Everyone is a different version of the same thing. 100% investors have the power, and the power they have is in proportion to how much money they put in. So rather than a true democracy, like the cooperative model of one member, one vote, and you have truly every human matters the same, there every dollar, every euro matters the same. The more euros you have, the more you matter. The more euros you have invested, the more your return. Think about the inequality problem that this is feeding, that the centerpiece of inequality, if you look at the work of Thomas Piketty, is the return to capital outstripping the return to labor. If you structure your company to give return based on who had the most capital to begin with, you are supercharging inequality into the enterprise model. And of course, we have an inequality growing everywhere because that is the business model that dominates everywhere. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because if we can shift the conversation to say, this is a choice. This is not natural. You don't go into the forest and the mountains and the rivers and see profit maximizing shareholder capitalist companies. We created this. We designed this like that. It's in our laws. It's in the Corporations Acts and business laws that this is how it is structured. If we can make it like this, we can make it in a million other ways. The cooperative movement has got some fantastic models in there. And I think we need to pull that conversation into enterprise design. And to do that, it means that we have to look open-minded. We have to look innovative and fresh, and not like, yes, our model, our solution, our answer from 200 years ago is still the right answer. This is the answer. This is the template. This is the blueprint. You do this, everything is big. If we pursue the conversation and the debate in that way, people will ignore us. They will think, okay, they have nothing new to say. They are saying the same thing from 200 years ago. Great. I agree, for a long time, the cooperative movement has had the centerpiece of the answer. But I think we have to look fresh, look innovative, and look like we are reinventing the model to drive the conversation to enterprise design. And if everybody is talking about enterprise design, if they are talking about how are things governed, who's owning them, what is the relationship with finance, what is the expectations of finance, what is the purpose, what are the networks? If we're talking about these enterprise design concepts, then the debate is in the territory we want it to be. Then we are talking about cooperatives, then we are talking about social solidarity economy. Now we can reinvent things. But I think step one is we need to invest our time into a big narrative shift rather than trying to say, look, we were right all along, let's convince everyone. Instead, we're saying we are part of this new innovation of entrepreneurs and people starting community businesses and people working and building something from the ground up. We are part of this and we're doing it differently, and we have to surprise the audience. If they are not surprised, they are not listening. So I think that's the main message I have for the cooperative movement, to use its potential in this way.
Thank you. This is brilliant. This is exactly the focus that we're trying to give to a lot of our action. And speaking to the rest of the world and telling, how our model can be fit, for this century, for the upcoming challenges, is actually very much part of the agenda of our organization at this, but our organization at the global level. I mean, ICA is working on this, so International Cooperative Association. So I agree with you, and it's a brilliant way of looking at it. So thank you. Well, the other curiosity we have is, for those of us who've studied the framework, the Doughnut Economics framework, is where today are those principles put in at work? I mean, where is it happening? Where do you see the theory materializing into practice today? And if you could share some example, I mean, as an inspiration, but also really as a way maybe to interact and also to learn, because that would be that would be something very interesting, I think, for a lot of cooperatives and for a lot of us also working in the financial world. So yeah, if you can share that, that would be lovely. Yeah.
So Paula, the model and the framework and the ideas are starting to resonate at so many levels. We are getting a lot of interest at city level in particular. Cities are saying, look, we see this as being a way to frame our broader policy, not just business, everything, housing, everything, healthcare, the local ecology. And so we've got loads of cities around the world that are really leading the charge on this. Amsterdam was one of the first and biggest and most public. In fact, it was featured in Time magazine on this, on how they are taking Doughnut Economics and putting it into practice at a city level to shape the future of their city government. But more broadly as well, I mean, everywhere from Berlin to Brussels, and also countries, Ireland and Brunei, for instance. The Kingdom of Brunei is looking at how this can be a centerpiece. And even the Pope and the Vatican have put this into their own economic vision. So it's starting to resonate at multiple levels, because it gives you a perspective that, how do you disagree with this? It tells you there are planetary boundaries. Who's going to this? Of course, this planet cannot forever be abused and exploited. It has a boundary. Yeah, we can quantify, we can measure this boundary. Actually, we can measure you know, what we can take in terms of its impact on the soil and ground, its impact on fresh water withdrawals, the carbon and climate. We can measure all of this. So planetary boundaries, everyone can accept, right? And then life's essentials. We need everybody to have the minimum of life's essentials on this planet. We're having increasing population around the world in total, and more pressure is coming onto Earth's resources. So together, in many ways, this is a statement of facts that we have a planetary boundary and we have social foundation for everyone. But when implemented at any level, it then pushes very big questions about, well, wait a minute, if this is the reality, then we cannot just grow forever. We cannot just solve every problem by just making more, producing more, using more resources. There's a big transformation that needs to happen, and it forces a question about the relationship between the ecology and society. It forces you to think about, okay, if you have this ecological impact, what social benefits are you creating? And if you're using ecological impact, you better have the maximum social benefits possible from this. This is where I think the model of the fair trade enterprises that, you know, until this role I came into some months ago, I was the chief executive of the World Fair Trade Organization. And there we worked on the most beautiful artisanal produced, usually cooperative or hybrid cooperative models around the world. And there you can see that actually for the same production, from if you compare a fast fashion factory and an artisanal handmade enterprise and on the ground level, that they have a very different social impact. The handmade products create more livelihoods. They use natural fibers. They often don't have carbon, but they also create much more opportunity for people that are marginalized. They also create products that then are loved and treasured by the consumer for longer. So you're not like throwing out a H&M t-shirt every week because you wear it once or twice and you get a new one. No, you end up with a handmade, you know, indigenous wisdom put into the product itself. So you end up with a very different relationship between ecology and society and the benefits the enterprise creates. And those are the sorts of solutions that I think the Doughnut actually asks us to think about and asks us to analyze. At a business level, we are beginning to open up this. So before I came to lead our work on business and enterprise, Doughnut Economics had a big question mark. What does this mean for business? Because this is the relationship between humans and our planet. And the relationship between business in the middle of that wasn't very clear, but it's becoming clear. And the focus is increasingly on how do we redesign business? How do we redesign its governance and its ownership, its finance and its purpose and its networks, all of the things that the cooperative movement has been demonstrating for many years. That is the big direction that now Doughnut Economics is asking of the business world. Unless we change the very structure of business, the relationship between money and business, then we actually are not going to solve the big challenges of the 21st century, because the way we produce, the way we consume, and the way we share benefits are destroying our planet and are exploiting our people. And this has to change radically. We cannot just make a little bit of improvement here and there.
Excellent. Yes, thank you so much. This is so interesting, and it's really interesting because your take is exactly what we should be looking for, you know, out there. But we are not so. I don't think we're so good at really transferring. For instance, what you just said. I mean, the design of our business to the outside world and to the people, the stakeholders that we talk to. Especially, you know, the public bodies that we talk to and that we provide services to and that we work with, you know, for a number of essential services that we deliver to people. And that's also a big challenge still for us. But anyway, the last question I have for you, then of course you can also ask us questions, by the way. I wanted to tell you, but we were thinking that, you know, the framework, the Doughnut framework is very powerful and effective, and it's also graphic. So it's really interesting because it highlights this the safe belt, you know, area where sapiens can sit between, you know, the environmental, the social boundaries and all that. And so what role does the concept of boundary and threshold play, and how does it find its place within the debate and the public debate that is going on today? Because we're still in a world that celebrates, technology supremacy, infinite growth and exploitation, and all that. I mean, new materials that are being exploited, which is the next, boundary, the next whatever, the next frontier. This concept of threshold, of limit, I mean, what role do you think it plays, I mean, in the current debate? Is this something that we can actually handle, or is it very dangerous, to speak about thresholds today?
I think increasingly we're talking about it. So that's an improvement. I'm hearing, lots of different initiatives and efforts and partnerships and collaborations and, projects that are trying to tackle this. Including from the business world. And, like people are looking at, what's my, science-based carbon targets? Or I think carbon and climate is where we can do this most clearly, by the way. It's most difficult in the other things. I mean, biodiversity, how do you decide what your threshold is? If you chop a tree in the Amazon and plant a new tree in Europe somewhere, it's not the same. The tree in the Amazon is a different thing. It does a different, it's supporting a biodiversity that's incredibly different. So I think doing this and quantifying these thresholds, there are different elements of the journey happening, but I think overall, I'm not finding it controversial to say we have thresholds, we have crossed those thresholds, we need to retreat from those thresholds. The troubling thing is people talking about sustainability. They're saying, well, let's now move to a point where we are sustainable. It's not enough to be sustainable. We have made damage. We have to repair the damage, which is why I think the new concept of being regenerative, to being generous back to society and to our planet is the new concept we have to embrace. We have to be careful because companies are already beginning to greenwash and appropriate that terminology. I'm seeing regenerative this and that on things, just like sustainable this and that was 5 years ago, and before that it was corporate responsibility, and so I think there is a lot of people who use the big words with doing minimal amount of things, but the threshold conversations are there and people are discussing it, people are accepting it. What it means at a business level, we are so far from having any, I think, even meaningful answer about how much carbon should a business use. We all need to reduce significantly, but what's the right amount for which business? At what point, how much social benefit is being created? I'm seeing a lot of effort put into circular economy. I'm a big fan of circular economy. I work with lots of circular economy initiatives. When I was at the World Fair Trade Organization, I pushed a big agenda on circular economy, especially in fashion and in handmade products. But the problem is that I'm seeing a lot of these fantastic examples of circular economy that are destroying 10,000 jobs in the supply chain to create 10 engineering jobs in the global north. And if we are moving economic activity to have a very fancy new ecological solution through circular economy, then we have to think, what is the economic activity that will need to be created to recreate those 10,000 jobs in the global south especially? And what will be its ecological impact? And maybe by actually destroying this and having a mechanized circular economy production in the global north, in total, you've created more ecological footprint. Because this is the unique perspective of Doughnut Economics. You cannot just do the ecological without thinking about the social. You have to think about what is the social impact as well alongside it. So those two, I think, are going side by side. And I think we have a long way to go before we figure out what is the right direction of travel on this. At the planetary level, we know what we need to do. At a national level, we know what to do as well. We know where we are in overshoot of our planetary boundaries, and we know where we are under delivering on the social foundation. It is at business level that we are very far, which is why the next step has to be, we need to reinvent business completely so that it can pursue these goals not just because it is ticking a box, not just because it is meeting a regulation, not just because it is got a target and it's trying to get to that target. No, but because it is designed to care about this. It is designed in its governance and its ownership to really look at these trade-offs and these tensions and social and ecological together and find ways of navigating it, because day to day, there are so many micro decisions every business takes. You cannot regulate all of these. You can regulate some of the big ones, maybe. Great, do it. I'm not saying stop, but we cannot just rely on regulation. We need to actually reinvent business so that the managers and the decision makers and the workers and the participants of that business are all together trying to create the solutions rather than just meet whatever is the minimum they need to get to. So this is why I agreed with the premise of your earlier question, Paula, that, you know, regulation is, yes, good, important, needed, but not sufficient. We also need to reinvent business overall.
Yeah, and it's a whole question of actually also training new managers, new entrepreneurs, because what it boils down to is that entrepreneurs today are not creative. They don't have this, I mean, if you're thinking about redesigning a business, you can think of it. Maybe I can think of it, or Giacomo can think of it because he's been trained, you know, in that mindset. But a number, you know, an enormous number of people coming out of MBAs, coming out of, you know, whatever economic faculties around Europe are not trained for that. I mean, they've been trained, they are today in 2022, they're trained in, like you used to train people in the 50s. So that's
even
the whole
worse,
challenge.
even worse, because I mean, in the 50s, they didn't have business schools. So you learned
That's
about,
right.
You learned about economics, you learned a little more the macro picture. Now, I mean, I went to business school, I teach at multiple business schools. What do students learn? Most business students, they learn how to sell more. They know how to do the accounting so that you have more money. They know how to access finance so you have more money. They know how to do corporate governance so that you can give more money to your shareholders. Everything you learn is how to make more money. Even, you know, ethical issues like, you know, the ESG and the social finance agenda. If you look, keep digging and digging and digging, the way they do materiality assessment, which is essentially the way that they decide what is important for a business, it is how will the social issue mean it risks how much money I will make? How will the ecological issue risk how much money I will make? Underneath it, they have to consider, they cannot consider ethical and social and environmental issues if it isn't impacting their bottom line. So yeah, you're right. We're designing business schools to train people to only think this way. And then they are going into corporate structures that are forcing them to behave this way anyway. And then the regulations around it assume that they will behave this way. So no surprise, this is the world we have.
No, absolutely. And that's why it's also, I think it's also very radical what Kate Raworth has done, because she's in academia and this is a big, major shift that has to happen. And if she acquires more and more legitimacy, even in the academic world, then that's going to be, I think, a big step. And that's what we hope for, at least. But thank you so much, Erinch. This has been such an interesting conversation. And I really would love to, you know, talk to you for more time, but time is running. And I just wanted to let Giacomo talk to you about this project that we have ongoing. Because also in the cooperative movement in Italy, innovation is happening. Surprise, surprise. We're working on it at least. And so Giacomo is here to tell you about this, the work that he's doing and this that he's contributing to also with Bibi and other colleagues in Bologna. You know, Bologna is a very hot center, you know, for innovation and for the cooperative movement in Italy. So they're working on this, and they also wanted to maybe engage with you in the future and maybe, you know, try to keep this relationship going because we're really interested in following the work that you're doing and see if we can sort of lay it in our work as well in some way, and maybe learn and sort of transfer all these good things and principles and frameworks to the work that we do. So Giacomo, I'll let you speak.
Thank you very much, Paola, and most of all, thank you very much, Erinch, because like it was super inspiring. I remember I first heard Kate speaking at an event in the Netherlands, like in 2018, and I was so touched. Like I bought the book, I read it so many times. I really like the work you're doing, and it's so true what you said also about the fact that we teach not only students but also startuppers. For example, like I'm still working in the startup world. I'm helping some startups to implement some sustainability strategy, and but their perception is just first of all, the investor asked me to maximize the profit, and second of all, if I need to do something in terms of a wider approach, it's just sustainability in terms of environmental sustainability, because I can communicate it better, which to me it's very hard also to communicate with them and let them understand this other point. But that's what we're working on. Especially with this magazine that we just launched, and it's called Change Makers. It's what Paula was talking about. Basically, with this magazine, we want to promote a different economy, a different vision of the world related on impact, which of course takes into consideration not just economic results, but of course society and environment, for which we are working especially, and we are trying to target especially young people, young change makers. We are launching right now a course on social impact startups that would like to be on regenerative business and not just sustainable and what's out there in the world. And so, yeah, we are linked to the cooperative world. We want to promote a different model of doing business, and it would be really interesting if we could have some further interaction also in the future, maybe with some event. We create a community of change makers here in Italy. It would be nice to have you or Kate at an event or something like that.
I would be honored, Giacomo. I mean, you're exactly the kind of initiative and community that we want to find a way to support, but also learn from. I mean, you're doing the work. We are thinking and we are connecting and we are talking to people around the world doing this sort of work. But yeah, you're on the ground and you're working with the actual change makers. So I'm very keen and open to figure out how to support. Travel is very difficult at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. We are pretty digital at the moment.
But yeah, anything digital, I will prioritize.
Also, yeah, maybe some I don't know, an interview that we might write, because also just to promote this different model, combining academic and
yeah, I'd be delighted. I'd be delighted to write something to be translated or not, or we can record a video, or we can talk about examples from around the world. But also we would one thing we are doing we're creating a toolkit around enterprise design. So all the things I just mentioned to Paula, we're trying to also, through new language and new ways of explaining things, kind of open more doors, because Doughnut Economics sometimes goes into different rooms. Like when I was in the cooperative or social enterprise or social economy kind of movement, I would go into some rooms. Even when I was a chief executive of a big organization, they would I would be invited to some. I'm going into different rooms now, where actually it's different language that starts to influence people. So we're trying to create this toolkit and approach and perspective around what we are calling enterprise design. But it's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing, but we're using slightly different language because we want to really open new people to these concepts. And I can imagine maybe from your community of change makers that are doing these sorts of social sort of economy enterprises, it would be good to get their reaction to this toolkit and get your reaction as well. And landing well enough? Is it missing something really critical? Is it, so yeah, I would love to find a way to also get input from your community in different ways.
That's nice. What do they find this toolkit? Because I'm pretty interested in it.
Yeah, we haven't done it. We're doing it now. So we're running pilot workshops with social economy enterprises. With there's one we are doing in Amsterdam at the moment, but some there are a few steward-owned companies in there. For instance, there's Fairbnb as part of our pilot program, doing sort of bringing platform cooperativism and a few other sort of those sorts of models we're working with to learn from the diversity of enterprise designs they have, the different structures. But we could run like I don't know how good the English is of your colleagues.
It's good.
Well, we could do an online workshop, like 2 or 3 hours, to kind of do a little test run, very rapid test run, see how they react, like which bits are useful, which bits are not, like, and then that will be part of our pilot series that before we publish.
That would be amazing, actually. Maybe at the end of these 7 online courses, let's say, appointment, we could do a premium one on this toolkit.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, do let me know what sort of dates you're thinking would work. And for me, it's I have all the materials ready. I have like activities and things. I'm running like 2 or 3 a week at the moment, just to test in different, like next week I'm doing
It would be maybe by the end of April, beginning of May, could it be?
Yeah. That would work quite well.
That's cool.
Wow, super. Excellent. Giacomo, maybe we can work on selecting a number of, people and yes, cooperatives and startups, and we have, a selected number of cooperative startups that may be the good, people to put around this workshop and have you test your tool with them, because we've got a nice community. I mean, Giacomo has told you, and this would be so interesting, really. Thank you for proposing that, because good. So we'll bother you again, Erinch.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I'll share with you guys the draft program we are using, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We're currently doing like online around 6, 8. That's sort of maybe 10 maximum sort of enterprises. Okay. Just to pilot it, to get otherwise sometimes it gets too big, the discussion. But I'll share with you a draft program so you can understand what we're building through it. Okay, cool. But at which stage should the enterprise be? Can they also be just idea, scratch, or any stage? Super. Any stage. In many ways, it's easier for the younger ones. They have to think about, before they get venture capital. Don't get venture capital. There's no turning back. Then you end up in the wrong direction. Exactly. But, nice. Yeah. So yeah, that would be wonderful. I'll share with you guys that concept note and see what you think. And yeah, I'd love to work with you guys. You're doing the real work. So thank you so much. Amazing. Thank you. Just one more thing. Sorry, Erinch, just to make our editors happy. Would you please say hello to, imagine you're on the 24th saying hello to like these 50, 80, 100 people that will be connected to our event, saying hello, it's nice to be here, or something like that, so we can record you saying that and then translate it. Okay. Is that okay? Of course. Last thing I ask you, sorry. No problem at all. It's a pleasure. So, hello, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to join you today. I know that the cooperative movement is driving the big changes we need. So I'm honored to be connected to this event, to this initiative and this community. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. This is perfect. I'm so sorry, but I have to run. And I thank you so much for your availability and this very, initial, but very precious and rich exchange. I don't know if Giacomo, you wanted to say something else. I also really want to thank you for your time, and I'm really looking forward for this workshop we can do. So yeah, just let's stay in contact, and in short, we're gonna come back to you. I don't have your email, Giacomo, but I'll send it to Paola, and we can. Yeah, I'll connect you too. No problem. Yeah, and we connected on LinkedIn. Yeah, and thank you, Bibi, for your assistance. Grazie mille. And so, yeah, happy rest of the day. Have a good weekend, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Grazie mille. Grazie. Grazie. Ciao. Thank you so much. Bye. Ciao Paola, ciao Bibi. Ciao. Ciao.